So we're back. I've imported the instrumental so I can keep my POS computer from overloading. Holy, I think I'm gonna have to purge my audio tracks.
Purging audio clips can save a massive amount of CPU load. Basically what purging audio clips does is it gets rid of all the unnecessary files that you didn't end up using in your playlist.
Go FL Studio and purging audio clips.
With no other software can you purge audio clips just like FL Studio. If you want to buy FL Studio, my affiliate link is in the bottom.
Great, in theory that should have worked, but it didn't do. I feel like my computer's just gonna heat up and explode in a minute. No more tutorials for you guys. Then you can put your dirty comments. So here's what the whole thing sounds like with the vocals.
On your way from way back way, you know that I don't play. Streets not safe, but I never run away, even when I'm away. OT, OT, it's never much love when we go OT. I pray to make it back in one piece. I pray. That's why I need one dance. Got a Hennessy in my hands. One more time.
Alright, that's enough. If you want to hear the full version after I'm done with this annoying you can click on the link below. Okay, so I've wasted enough time, so let's get into it. I'm going to turn off all the effects for now, just so I can go through it one by one and tell you exactly what I did along the way. As you can notice right away, turning off all these effects has reduced my CPU load to 20. Damn, this Mac's slow. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through this little audio blip right here.
I need one dance. I need one dance.
And that one's made pretty simply, so it's basically just one vocal recording, so it's basically all these little vocal blips routed through to my mixer track on number 12. I basically just put a parametric EQ on it and rolled off the low end a little bit to make it sound less boomy, and from there I routed through to 3 different vocal tracks, and from those vocal tracks they are all going to one all vocals bus, just to make it a little bit easier to control for when I'm adjusting the volumes here. So in order to route one channel through or split it into multiple channels, what you want to do is right click down here on this little arrow and select route to this track. If you want to undo that, just left click on that arrow up there and it'll undo your routing. And what you also want to do is, because when you first open the channel, it's going to be routed through to the master track. You want to unlink it from the master, because we only want the vocals going from here, split into these 3 bands, and then going to the all voices bus. And the all voices bus is being routed through to the master. So the first voice is basically just my voice with some auto-tune on it.
I need one dance. I need one dance.
All I did was adjust the retune speed and put myself in D flat major, which is the key that worked best for my voice for this song. And from there I put another parametric EQ to drown out a little bit more of the lower frequencies and to boost some of the higher frequencies around 6 kilohertz, because that's where the presence of the voice is gonna sit for the song. So the second thing I routed through was the low pitched voice, which is basically the same thing as the normal voice. So the retune speed is set to 0, we're still in D flat major, and we're gonna change the transpose to -12, which is going to take the original vocals and just bring them down by 12 semitones.
I need one dance.
Or an octave. I have that one set a little bit quieter than my normal voice, and I also adjusted it a little bit with a parametric EQ, boost around 5K, low cut again. Then I put some Spitfish on that, which Spitfish, if you guys don't know it, is a free de-esser plugin. It works fabulous. I'll leave a download link in the description. Basically, the reason I use the de-esser on this one is because when you pitch your voice down, the S sounds that you originally have turn into sh sounds, and they sound extremely nasty on a lower pitch version of your voice. So without the de-esser, listen to the difference. So instead of dance, it's dance. So we want to get rid of that a little bit by using Spitfish. Now we can't get rid of it all the way, but we can do a little bit to it. So basically the way we want to set it up is that every time just that sh sound is happening, that it'll automatically turn down the volume for us a little bit. So what I did was turn the sense up all the way, turn the depth up all the way. The sense basically dictates how sensitive it is to those S or sh sounds. The depth basically says how far, how many decibels we are going to deduct from the original sound. And then the tune is basically just telling us what frequencies we're looking for. So I set it to just a little bit below 8K, around like maybe a 6 or 7-ish. And then I slapped another parametric EQ on there because the S sounds were really bothering me so much that I was just like, okay, I just gotta take that out. So to do that, just hit right click on one of the numbers, hit type, and then hit low pass. So they're not gonna be bothering us too much, and combined with the original voice, it sounds pretty good.
I need one dance. I need one dance.
Then the last thing we're gonna do is pretty much the same thing that we did with the low voice. We're going to insert an auto-tune. We're gonna transpose it up 12 semitones. We can keep the retune speed pretty much the same or a little bit slower. It doesn't really matter. I find with higher frequencies, the faster the retune speed is, the more artifacts you start getting in the sound. But mixed in with the other voices, it's not going to be too noticeable. I have my retune speed at 5, but I might as well just have had it at 0. It doesn't really affect it that much. Then I added a parametric EQ, gave it a little bit of a boost here around 7 or 8 kilohertz. And then I added Spitfish again to get rid of the sibilance. This time I'm trying to filter out the S, the S sounds, because every time you pitch voices higher, the S sounds actually turn into S. So even higher pitched S's, which are really annoying. So we can filter that out pretty easily with Spitfish. And then the next thing I did for this was add a gross beat. So I'm basically just using gross beat for volume automation at the end of the line.
I need one dance.
So at the point where it goes one dance, just the higher vocal is gonna dip down a little bit because I found that at that part it was just a little bit too loud. So I use gross beat to do that. So in order to do that, you just go down here, make sure that it's highlighted in orange. You don't want to be highlighted in green because otherwise you're gonna do something way else. Basically what you should have is something that looks like this. Drag this knobby all the way down, right click up here to drag that knob up, and then adjust the volume to the point where basically where you think it sounds correct. And also if you right click on these little knobs, you can decide what kind of curve it's going to be. For this one specifically, I just selected single curve and pull down the volume a little bit so that it's not too harsh or too noticeable right away.
I need one dance. I need one dance.
Yeah, so that sounds pretty cool. And then on the all voices bus, which all these voices are basically routed through that bus, I just have basically a limiter where I turn the threshold down a little bit.
I need one dance.
The way to adjust the threshold is always finding basically the peaks down here and basically basing it off of pretty much like the quietest parts within the vocals. But you do want to keep it like reasonable, right? Like you don't want to go down here to that peak down in that corner. You just want to keep it reasonable somewhere like on a medium level so that it's kind of the same thing for all of the lower peaks. And then you want to adjust your ratio. A good ratio for vocals I always find is somewhere between like 3 and 4 to 1. And that's all that I did with the limiter. Then I added a fruity reverb, which again is just a preset. So if you scroll through the preset options, you'll eventually come to this one that kind of looks like I don't even know what that looks like right there. But yeah, I just used the basic preset there. I turned down the wet a little bit or adjusted it to my liking. Then I used FO Squeeze. Basically what this is just sort of like a saturation plugin, which adds sort of a little bit of harmonic distortion. And again, I just use a preset here called Grit, and I turn down the mix a little bit to make it not stand out as much.
I need one dance. I need one dance.
So you definitely want to be careful with that one and don't turn the mix up too much. It just makes it sit a little bit better in the mix, in my opinion. In order to add a little bit more harmonic distortion, basically what I did is added a fruity wave shaper. That's in the preset Fuzzy 2, which you can find right here. And I basically just turned the mix down a little bit. So it's basically doing sort of like a side chain thing.
I need one dance.
And then I add another parametric EQ, just giving a little bit of a boost at around 1600 Hz. And that's basically how that sounds done. And now we're gonna get to the actual vocals. I'm gonna start with the singing vocals because those are the first ones that happen in the song. Baby. So as you can tell, without any effects, my voice does not sound that great. Baby. But that's okay, because that's what auto-tune is for. So we basically just route it through to the mixer on mixer track number 4. From there, we're sidechaining it to the vocal sidechain, to our reverb sidechain, and to the all voices bus. But we'll get to that in a bit as well. So I'm going to turn all the effects back on, and this is what it's going to sound like after all the effects are applied. So a lot better. And you know, the first thing that I'm gonna have to do is thank Autotune for creating such an amazing software and helping my voice out so much. Thank you so much, Antares. So again, we're gonna use D flat major as a scale. We're gonna set the retune speed to about 17, between 17 and 20, whatever sounds good for your voice. If you're super off, you might want to set it to 0, but I think around 17 is just where it sounds good. It still sounds somewhat natural, and you can't hear the Autotune too much. Then again, what we added is Spitfish, which is just the de-esser that we use on the other vocals. Then we added a parametric EQ just with like a little bit of a low cut. So again, right click on one of the numbers, type, high pass, order. You can keep it on 2. And we basically drown out these low parts of the vocals again, just to make it sound a little bit more high definition. The next thing we added was a fruity limiter. We turned the threshold down a little bit because I feel like the vocals that were there were almost overly compressed. So all the dynamics were sucked out of it, but it sounds kind of cool, not gonna lie. So I turned the threshold down a lot to about -30. The ratio is up to my regular, so around like 3:1. And it works out really nicely for these vocals. And then we have the wave shaper again with the distortion preset. Right click, fast distortion 2. And we just turn down the mix a little bit to a comfortable level where the distortion wasn't really taking over the sound. The next thing that we have was a reverb that was going on in here. And that again is just a preset. It's just the second one over when you click the button over here. As you may have noticed, the reverb was off because I actually automated it to be on in only these parts. But we don't want too much reverb being applied for when it's doing basically the harmonies for the Drake voice. So if you want to automate your reverb, just right click on this little knob here, hit create automation clip, and that'll throw something that looks like this down here. Basically what I did is just put a bunch of knobs over here and made it look like this and like this and like that, and that's how I made that sound cool. So the next effect that I use on the singing vocals was a stereo enhancer to make it sound a little bit more in the background. So just fruity stereo enhancer and then click on 4 strings. Preset works really nicely for this one. And then again, I added the ferric TDS, which is, again, it's so amazing for the fact that it's free. So download that one. And I think I just used it on a preset as well. So it's probably like max it or something like that. Yeah, that seems to be the one that I use. And then from there, I routed my singing vocals through to the vocal sidechain, which is this one over here. And basically what the vocal sidechain is doing is just basically compressing the vocals again and having it as like a second layer. So in order to sidechain it, again, just right click down here and hit route to this track. Then on the sidechain channel, just open the fruity compressor and click on blower. It's the same preset that we used when we were creating the bass. And then you just want to open the fruity wave shaper and just add a fuzzy saturator. Now, once you did that, be sure to turn down your vocal sidechain a lot. Like, you almost don't want to hear it, you sort of just want to feel that it's there. So yeah, just make sure that that's fairly quiet and just really off in the background. Second thing that I routed to was the reverb over here, which is basically the same thing that I did for the weekend tutorial. So basically what this is just a large hall reverb. So if we click to default, we can just click right like 4 or 5 times and it'll bring us to this window. And then basically all with that we got to do is turn down the dry all the way. And then once we have that, we want to add a limiter, hit the compressor function on the limiter, hit sidechain to sidechain 1, basically telling it that it's looking for the key input from the singing vocals over here. And then in the compressor, we can adjust the threshold, put it fairly low and the ratio fairly high. Basically what it's doing is it's making sure that the reverb is not playing whenever the vocals are present, and as soon as the vocals cut out, the reverb kind of tails in, which is a really cool effect. And that sort of big hall reverbing effect seems to be getting pretty popular with pop music these days. So it's definitely something that you want to keep in your skill set. Okay, so let's get to the interesting part, which is the Drake vocals over here. So as you can tell, my voice is really not that special.
Drifts on your way from way back way.
And I have to admit that I didn't put too much effort into perfecting my lines, because otherwise I'd be here still in like 20 hours, and for the purposes of this tutorial, it would just be overkill. So I'm gonna turn all the effects on and take you through all the effects that I basically added to the vocals. So again, we have auto-tune in D flat major, retune speed at 18, pretty straightforward. Then we have spitfish just to DS again. Then we have the parametric EQ, taking out some of the low ends and boosting around 3K and around 9K, because that's sort of where the presence of the voice sits. If you actually listen to Drake's voice, you hear that he has a lot of high end sort of going on in there. So that's why I boosted that. Then I added fruity limiter, compressed it a little bit. Same thing as with the other vocals, only that the compression ratio is a lot higher with this voice. It's about 7:1. When you actually listen to Drake's voice, you hear that they over compressed it, which is a pretty cool sound effect for pop. The next thing I did was just add another spitfish, and I hit the soft button over here. So this one's not gonna take out the sibilance to an extreme, but it's gonna help duck it down a little bit more. I just wanna make sure that after boosting the high frequencies with that parametric EQ, that I'm really not destroying anyone's ears with sibilant frequencies. The next thing I added was a delay, the offset a little bit to the right, the time, I set it to a very short time again, and I turned down the volume a little bit. That's going to give it a little bit more of a like depth to it, almost like a reverby feel, but not really reverby. It's just going to make the voice sound a little bit nicer and a little bit fatter. And then I added a soft reverb on it. Again, it's one of those presets, and the wet slider is just turned way down because I didn't want it like overtaking the vocals. And then from there, what I did is I routed it through to a reverb compression channel, and this one's pretty interesting because I was thinking about, okay, how did Drake get his vocals to sound so full, and I couldn't figure it out for the life of me for the longest time, and I think this is what he did. I can't really say 100%, but yeah, check out what this sounds like with the reverb compression and without the reverb compression.
Drifts on your way from way back way. You know that I don't play. Streets not safe, but I never.
So it just gives it a little bit more of a wider feel. And basically all I did here was, so I routed the main vocals over to the reverb compression channel. I added a pretty big reverb just with standard settings. Then I added the fruity limiter that's basically acting as a noise gate. And basically what the noise gate here is doing is just making sure that once the vocals stop, the reverb also stops. So you want to hit sidechain and 1. Basically what it means is that it's going to be affected by the main vocals over here, and then you can turn off this little eye over here and turn on this green one instead. What that's showing you is the output peaks of the audio signal that you're actually outputting, so it's a little bit safer when working with the noise gate here.
Drifts on your way from way back way.
So you want to turn down the gain all the way and adjust the threshold. Basically what you want is just reverb happening when the voice is happening as well. And as soon as the voice stops, you want the reverb to stop as well. So make sure the gain is all the way down and play around with the threshold and the release a little bit until you have something that looks similar to this.
Drifts on your way from way back way. You know that I don't play. Streets not safe, but I never run away, even when I'm.
So right here is a pretty good example of what just happened. So as soon as the vocal stopped, the reverb stopped acting as well. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is add a compressor. We're going to use the preset called blower again. So basically what we're doing is we're just compressing the reverb, then we're gonna add a parametric EQ and just shape just that reverb just a little bit to make it sound kind of cool and sort of bring up the frequencies that the main vocals maybe aren't occupying, and just make it sound a little bit wider that way.
Drifts on your way from way back way. You know that I don't play.
Okay, so that's how you get it to sound a little bit wider. Then we routed the Drake vocal through to the vocal sidechain. Same thing as with the singing vocals over here. And then we routed it through a delay effect, which we're basically doing the same thing as with the reverb on the singing. So what that means is just open Fruity Delay, change the time to 2 steps or whatever time frame you want the delay to occur, set the offset a little bit to the right, don't adjust the volume, turn down the dry knob as well because we only want just the delay on that channel. Then open the limiter. Basically what we're doing is doing the sidechain compression again, sidechain 1 compression, turn down the threshold, turn up the ratio, and then we're gonna add a little bit of a reverb just on the delay to make it sound a little bit more embedded with the rest of the vocals.
Drifts on your way from way back way. You know that I don't play.
The other thing that I did with the Drake vocals was add some high-pitched doubles that only occur at certain parts, as you can see right over here.
Drifts on your way from way back way. You know that I don't play. Streets not.
So basically what I did is just took these vocals, copied them, pasted them exactly under it, click that little button over here, then select Make Unique, and then from there you can route it through to the mixer channel that you wanted without routing this one through to the same channel. So it's really important that you hit Make Unique on that one. Then I added the Auto-Tune Evo, pitched it up or transposed it by 12 semitones. The key was in C chromatic. We could change it to the D flat minor. It wouldn't really make that much of a difference with the high pitch vocals, just because they're so quiet you're not really gonna hear it. But if you want to be really anal about it, yeah, put them in the same key as your main vocals. And then what we're gonna do is just add a little bit of a reverb and a stereo enhancer to make them sit a little bit more in the background. So again, stereo enhancer and then the 4 strings preset. The last thing I did was double the vocals. This is legitimately just me singing the vocals again to make it sound a little bit wider and a little bit more harmonic for the chorus.
Got a Hennessy in my hands. One more time before I go. Higher powers.
And then we adjusted those vocals similar to the original vocals. We got the auto-tune, spitfish, parametric, the limiter, compressor, and reverb on those. Now the reverb isn't on the main vocals, but we did add the reverb on these vocals just to make it sound a little bit wider for that chorus part. And then the last pair of vocals that we added was the background singing vocals that you can find over here.
One dance, got a Hennessy.
And those are basically just the vocals, again, basically the same settings as everything else. Auto-tune, we got the EQ. Now with this, we were a little bit steeper on the lower frequencies because we want the vocals to sit in the background a little bit more. Crank the high frequencies a little bit more. Then we added the compressor again with the Fruity limiter. We added a delay, we added a reverb, and then the love filter to give it sort of that radio effect.
I need a one.
And that, again, because I'm a preset lover, is one of those. So once you're in Fruity Love Filter, just hit right a couple of times until you get to that setting. That makes it sound a little bit patty, a little bit spacey. And the last thing we did was add a stereo enhancer with the same preset. And once all the vocals were done, I glued everything together with another Ferric TDS, same preset as we used before. And this parametric EQ isn't really doing anything. I was just using it to monitor what my vocals were doing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the sound for the vocals of Drake's One Dance cover.
One dance, got a Hennessy in my hands. One more time before I go. Higher powers taking a hold on me. I need
One last thing that I wanted to state before I leave you guys here is in the original Drake song, as I said before, I think they recorded it to tape, so they had a little bit of a tape hiss going, which is just a sample that I actually got while I was in the studio recording on a tape machine the other day, and I did include that in the sample pack for you for free, so you can thank me for that later. So that's it from me for today. I hope I didn't bore you too much. If you enjoyed the tutorial, leave me a like, leave me a comment. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, guys.